Yep.
Action.
Yep.
That's
Action. That's right.
We should be live.
Yeah,
we are live.
Yeah, we are.
We are live.
Oh,
hey, folks, Sean Dodson here with The Flip Side, and this is the After Hours Party. How are you doing, folks? And, of course, as always, I'm here at Three Rivers Brewery. I'm having a Amber Arroyo tonight, so cheers to all of you. And as always, I'm here with my co-host, David and DeCall. Yep. And just want to let everybody know that, of course, again, this is a non-PC show. It is your favorite non-PC beer drinking, thrill of the chasing show here at The Flip Side. And tonight we have a very special guest with us, and that is Mike Davis, also known as MDavis on the forums. And just want to let you, MDavis, go ahead and say hi to everybody on YouTube.
Hey, hi there. And special shout out to all my buddies over at Harry's place, especially Harry for starting the place. And, my buds, Presby, NMC, NJFL, Jonesy, Mountain Digger, Rooster, Larcenist, and of course, Ricky for keeping the place interesting. So, and anybody else whose name doesn't come to mind,
Yoda once in a while shows up too. So yeah, absolutely.
Yoda, yeah.
Say hi to the guys at Harry's.
Yep.
Yeah, you did let Mike know that it was a nickel a letter to say hello to all those people, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
We got some change.
That's how we monetize our channel. Is we gotta put a nickel in the kitty for everybody. But really, I just want to introduce Davis a little bit and let everybody get a chance to know who Mike is. And if you don't know, Mike is somewhat of a amateur astronomer, and he does have his own YouTube channel called Omega Geek 64. He actually has over 3,000 subscribers and nearly 3 million views on his channel. That's amazing. So congratulations to you on that, Mike. And I think you've had your channel since 2009. So that's really going back to when did YouTube start? I think 2007 or something. So that's really going back a ways in YouTube. So you've obviously been doing YouTube and putting a lot of, videos and stuff out there. But you also have your own website called mdpub.com, which I think stands for Mike Davis Publications. And you can see behind him there, he's advertising it. So I just want to give you a chance to kind of talk about a little bit about who you are and what you do outside of the chase. And then if you don't mind, tell everybody how you got into the thrill of the chase.
Okay. Well, like I was telling you before we went live, I'm an engineer working for a large multinational corporation, and it keeps me really busy. I put in like 10, 12-hour days pretty much every day, and don't have a lot of spare time, at least the last couple of years, for chasing, unfortunately. I have a lot of hobbies. Astronomy and telescope making are probably my biggest ones. I've been doing that since I was a kid. My grandfather gave me a little bitty telescope when I was a kid, and I used to take up on the roof of the apartment building we lived in and look at the stars with it, and that got me started, and it's just exploded from there into this massive hobby, building telescopes. Yeah. And I got a lot of other geeky hobbies. I started out as an electronic engineer. I'm deep into electronics, doing all kinds of electronic builds. I'm into machining. I'm kind of channeling Forrest Fenn a little bit. I built my own foundry and do a little casting out there. A lot of fun. I got some videos on YouTube about that and stuff on my website about it. It's a lot of fun. I can see why Forrest got into it, because it's great to start out with nothing and make something in the end, out of metal.
So you really cast like the mirrors, right? Is that what I'm getting at? And kind of watching some of your channel, and you actually cast the mirrors for the telescopes. Is that what you do?
Yes, I cast them out of glass. Yes, I have on my back porch. I've got a whole bunch of kilns out there, and I melt and fuse and cast glass in those. Plus, I play around with casting metal these days too. So it's all hobby stuff.
So what I'll do for those people that are interested, I'll also put in the description down below your YouTube channel, and then also your website, so people can go there and look and kind of check it out if they're interested in those things. So very cool. So yeah, you have you also talk about you've got some land out in Arizona that I think you like to go out some kind of remote. Is that what you use for kind of observing? I mean, I would imagine.
Primarily, yeah. I'm a member of the St. Pete Astronomy Club here in Florida, and we have an observing site, about 60 miles away. But it's not very dark. You got a lot of humidity. You got a lot of bugs. Not ideal for observing. I've got a place in Arizona. I got 40 acres out in the absolute middle of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
with a little cabin on it, solar power, and I'm in the process of building an observatory out there. But yeah, I do go out there a few times a year and take my telescope out there, and I do some observing and some astrophotography.
What's it, Mike? What's the nearest town out there in Arizona?
Probably a little burg called Concho, which population,
Wow.
I don't know, not much.
No, my uncle and my dad lived there in Concho at one time, very near there, and my uncle used to say that all the time. And going back to Concho, and it's a beautiful area. Yeah, I remember hiking there as a kid, and my dad showed us where their old shack used to be. My dad was quite poor as a kid. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's a beautiful area. Hard to believe. Yeah, we have more in common when we think, Mike.
Yep.
We'll get to that later. also, Mike, is that your land? Is that when somebody from Harry's finds the treasure that we're going to go out there and have the Harry's Fenn, so to speak, out there in Arizona?
That, sure, exactly. Yeah, sounds like fun. My cat is pretty small. Bring it
out there. But don't you also? I think I saw on one of your channels that you've actually home built your own wind turbine, like power generating turbine. Is that true?
Yeah. When I wanted power on my property because there was no utilities nearby, I built a wind turbine first, and then I got into building my own solar panels. And I have a whole section on my website on alternative energy, building solar panels, building wind turbines. And those parts of my website are very popular. A lot of people into alternative energy. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, you've had nearly 3 million views. That's amazing. That's awesome. Great. Good for you. That's great. Yeah.
Let me ask, to build the solar panels, did you use the sliding glass doors off of houses? Because that's what the guys around here do. It's amazing.
No, that's a good idea, though. I hadn't thought about that. No, I used Lexan panels on them because of the hail out west. So otherwise it'd shatter the glass.
There you go. Yeah, the guys around here. In fact, the guy across the street bought mine when I took them off. And I said, what are you going to use them for? He said, solar panels for my greenhouse, for my shower. Mm-hmm. And it was like amazing. And then he turned me on to the guy that does the, what is it with the tilapia and the vegetables and stuff are grown in water, the aquaponics.
Oh, yeah.
He turned me onto that guy. Yeah, he turned me onto that guy, and he had a whole thing of them made out of sliding glass doors because they could get them at the Sheriff Youth Ranch for $35 a pair.
Yeah, I can believe that. There's a couple of architectural salvage places around here. You can probably get them dirt cheap. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Huh?
Well, so we want to go right into, starting to ask you some questions, getting to know you and talking about stuff in the thrill of the chase. But one of the biggest things, at least in my opinion, that Mike, that you're known for is being a poem purist. And just here today, you did put out a thread over on Harry's explaining and kind of, doing a Q&A about, most of the common questions about what is poem purity and what is a poem purist and what, as a poem purist, in your opinion, and a lot of people question, if you're a poem purist, you shouldn't be looking this or shouldn't be doing that. So maybe just kind of give a synopsis of that and why you believe you are a poem purist and maybe what led you to a poem purist, kind of go along that lines a little bit. I'd like to hear it from another, what I call poem purist. So.
Well, I think what led me to it, well, you want to know how I got started in the chase. So I'll start from the beginning and work forward. First off, I'm a gold prospector, another one of my many hobbies. And I was traipsing around the West for years before the Fenn thing came along, all over the place. In fact, let me see right here. Gold placers of New Mexico. So yeah, I've been all over New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, the whole search area, basically, gold prospecting over the years. And so gold fascinates me. And I think I was researching something on gold for another prospecting trip out west. And I stumbled across Stephanie 30 Acres blog, the one that she had before Chase Chat. And she was talking about this treasure hunt out there and this eccentric guy who hid the treasure out somewhere out west. And I didn't have a copy of Thrill of the Chase yet. In fact, I don't even think it was published yet. or if it was hard to get a hold of. It was like on its first printing or something.
Yeah, first edition. Yeah, that had to be hard.
And so, I studied the poem, which was available online, and, came up with some ideas, and I went out on my first search out there. And then I started paying more attention to the forums, of course, my first boots on the ground search was a failure, as they all are. I started paying more attention to the forums, and I saw, how people who would get their copy of The Thrill of the Chase, and they would read through it, and they would be incorporating all this stuff that they find in the book into their solutions. And it didn't seem to make any sense to me. It's like, okay, you've got all this stuff. Where's the poem and all that? It's like, oh, the poem is an afterthought if it's even in there at all. They're talking about, his time at the Lanier School. They're talking about when he was in Yellowstone. They're talking about, this, that, and the other thing, his father's grave. It's like, where's the poem and all that? Come on, he says the poem. Back then he was saying the poem is all you need. He wasn't pushing the book back then the way he has been the last, some years. In the beginning, it was all you need is the poem, and because the book was hard to get. So, and then I got to thinking, these people, they seem to be just sort of chasing their tails out there. He says the poem is all we need. The poem is all we need. So I would make my solution ideas based on just stuff I could find in the poem, and try to leave out all that other extraneous stuff. Eventually, when I was passing through Santa Fe, I did stop at Collected Works, managed to get a hold of a copy of TPOTC, and I've read it and I have it, but I don't use it as a reference, other than every once in a while, if I don't have another copy of the poem handy, I'll open it up and look at the poem. But I don't use it as a reference. I just don't see that there's anything in there that's really helpful beyond the poem. And he's really said that. Fenn has said that in the past. That is the book helpful? Yes, because the poem's in it. So,
well, he has said, and a lot of people will echo this, that there are also other subtle clues sprinkled in the stories. And he said, a clue will point you towards the treasure, and a hint will only help you with a clue. So, I mean, there should be no doubt. I mean, from the architect is telling us that there is, subtle clues sprinkled in the stories that can help you with the with the clues. I mean, I would imagine, I would believe that you're probably not arguing that fact, right?
No. In fact, that's something I wrote about. That post I put up on Harry's today is something I've been thinking about putting up for a while. So, because I see people confused about poem purity. I see people actually attacking poem purists. Like there's something wrong with us, I mean, they don't have the treasure chest in their hands, but, Anyway, what I was thinking was, I'm losing my train of thought. What was the question again?
Well, let me ask you something, Mike. So, I just find it fascinating. I don't care. I don't care if you find anything in the book. I would just think if Fenn could have keeled over, kicked the bucket right in 2010, and all we're left with is the poem and Thrill of the Chase book. I mean, I'm kind of amazed that you wouldn't see any value in the book, really. I mean, is there anything in the book that you would find value in? Or I know nothing's going to be a hint, but maybe even the videos.
Well, okay, I remember what I was going to say. It's like, okay, there's hints in the book. Ben said there's hints in the book. But I see them as like needles in a haystack of rabbit holes, basically.
Yeah.
And you don't know if you found this little needle of a hint, or you've just found another rabbit hole.
Right.
And there's just too many of them.
You sound almost exactly like Sean Dodson over here. I mean, and I'm fine with it. I'm seriously fine with it. I'm amazed because it never occurred to me to think that way, really. And I still am not even close to willing to convert to that style,
Oh, please don't. Sean and I don't need the competition.
Yeah, I don't care. Shit.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of like Davis is saying, or that you've got 28,000 words in that book, plus or minus whatever. That how do you isolate with any level of certainty out of that what could be the subtle clues or subtle hints in that book when you have, just 166 words in that poem, and he says that all the information you need to find the treasures in that poem.
Right, but we still have, Sean, we still have absolutely no confirmation for the poem,
Sure.
for the book, for the videos, for the gossip, for anything. We don't have confirmation. In fact, that's my biggest foible, frustration is we don't have anything.
Everybody goes looking for that confirmation outside of the box, so to speak. They go looking outside of the poem or even outside of the book. I mean, let's just say, the book to me is still important. It still contains the poem, and it does contain subtle hints in there. I don't put a lot of effort in trying to isolate those, but people go looking outside for confirmations or things that will give them confidence in their solve. And I was no different in the fact that when I first got into this, like I said, I went outside looking for all kinds of confirmations that I was on the right path. And I found absolutely everything I was looking for. I found confirmations and coincidences everywhere that just gave me more confidence, but it didn't confirm that I was right. Absolutely not. And even in the poem, even in the 166 words in the poem, you're absolutely right, DeCall. We don't get any confirmation that either. There's absolutely no confirmation until we really get that treasure chest. That's the only real confirmation.
Right.
So by isolating just, to me, and I think Wade Davis, looks at this is just by isolating, to the 166 words in the poem, we're trying to mitigate as much confirmation bias as we can. You can't rule it out completely, I don't think at all, because you're still looking at word meanings. You're still trying to find context. We don't know if the word blaze means this or that to Forrest. He says it's something that stands out, but what does that mean? What is the word?
The poem is definitely the purest form of truth in this game. But I wonder, maybe Mike, you could tell us what you think. What does Fenn's rabbit holes look like? Are they 1 level deep, 2 level deeps? Are we looking for Up Your Paddle Creek? Are we looking for, some other 2 level, 3 level deep idea to trace it down? What does Fenn's logic look like? What do you think?
Well, I think that the rabbit holes, and I used to think he constructed them, intentionally to make this harder. I'm not so sure. I think maybe he's just tapped into something in our own psyche that makes us overcomplicate things. But the rabbit holes are as deep as you want to make them, as you can take. I have seen some seriously convoluted solutions, that make Rube Goldberg look like a piker. And I'm sure, that's nothing, like what Fenn constructed here. But, this is what people are putting together. And they're pulling strange inferences out from here and there. And they're putting together with these tortured chains of logic. And
yes. Tortured chains of logic. I'm going to steal that from you, please. My personal foundation principle is we're going to try and not be more than never 3 levels deep. So 1 or 2 levels deep. So for example, Paddle Up Your Creek for me is Beaver Creek next to Boat Mountain. Okay. It's a relatively shallow rabbit hole. We got beaver tails and we got paddle or a boat. But I'm just curious, does that sound, I know you hate my area, Mike, but does that sound like a deep rabbit hole, or do you?
No, that's not too deep. That's not too deep. I tend to look at things a little more simplistically. Like, no paddle up your creek to me has always meant maybe, hey, go downstream.
Yeah.
Go downstream. You're not going to paddle up creek. Go downstream.
Oh yeah. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say that any particular area is right or wrong, but it's wherever the poem leads you.
That's why I tell Sean all the time. People will argue about other people's solutions and other people's thoughts. We give Brother Thomas a hard time about floating hats and stuff. But you know what?
I was one of the first to give him a hard time about that too.
Show us the blue ribbon. but none of us really has the right to criticize anybody else's solve or way of working this thing until somebody has the chest in their hand. Then you really shouldn't criticize it. You should just be like, wow, you know, they had the way figured out. You know, I can't prove that the chest is not in Mike's or Brother Thomas's spot. I can't prove it. It may well be sitting there. You know, and you'll be blessed if it is, and you go out one day and you find it. You know, any of these folks in the chat room that are boots on the ground, you know, yesterday, tomorrow, the day after that, you know, the way that they work the poem is the way they work the poem. And I have absolutely no proof that the way that they're doing it is wrong or it's right. And so if I start to criticize it, what am I criticizing? I'm criticizing an unknown, you know, that's not even fair. You know, and as adults, I think sometimes we need to sit back and realize, you know, I gave somebody smoke last week about thinking the chest might be up in a tree. Okay, I need to apologize for that, because I'll tell you what, if there's a petrified tree out there and Fenn found it, that damn chest may just be up in a petrified tree.
Isn't that the one that went unproven? Like Dale early on said it wasn't in a tree, but that was the quote from Fenn that we couldn't definitively find the source for. Isn't that one of them?
Well,
the treasure.
Didn't he say something about he was talking to somebody and they said, you know, the blaze could be in a tree or no, he said the blaze could be the sun, and then the blaze could be up in the treasure could be up in in a tree, and then he's like, man, I don't even know if that person's ever been out in the forest. You know,
he didn't say up in a tree, but I do love that quote. He said in the trees. Yeah,
in the trees.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything. I mean, if I'm standing in a brewery right now and I'm in the trees because I'm surrounded by trees. If I was to walk outside, even if a tree is 100 miles over here and there's a tree over there, another 100 miles, and a tree over that way, I'm still in the trees. You know, I'm surrounded by them right next to me, but I'm surrounded.
One thing before I get off my soapbox,
you know.
There you go. One thing before I get off my soapbox, y'all just reminded me of something. I did want to ask Mike. One thing is since you're very familiar with astronomy, and I've mentioned this to Sean before, you know, the greatest blaze that we have is the sun. And all of the stars, when Fenn says that there are billions of blazes, you know, all you got to do is walk out and look at the night sky, and you're looking at 1 billion suns, you know? And I just wondered if that wasn't to orient us in the east. And the only reason I say east is that every single thing out there rises in the east. The sun rises in the east, the moon rises in the east, and the stars rise in the east. You know, and that's dependent on the Earth's rotation is why that happens. Okay. And it's not due east, it's northeast, southeast, east, northeast, whatever. Okay. But basically a heading of east. And I thought, wow, if the dude is only trying to orient us in that direction and get us moving in an easterly direction from wherever we may be standing at that point, if you've been wise and found the blaze, let's move east, you know, maybe.
It's possible.
No, it's not.
Believe me, believe me, I've tried to find an astronomical solution to the poem, but I just don't see it. Maybe it's there and I'm missing it, but I just don't see any astronomical references to it.
Oh, I just had to mention that since you were going to be here.
Well, Mike, let me ask you quickly. I mean, the 24 lines and Wolf's work on the solar aspects of the poem. I mean, Wolf and I agree perfectly about the 24 hours possible in the day, high, noon, and those sorts of things. Maybe some paganism or whatever. I'm just wondering if you see any of that or discounted that.
Well, remember Fenn said we don't need any specialized knowledge. So I think that probably alone rules out astronomy, because a lot of people don't know anything about it. I would call that specialized knowledge. You know, pagan religion, that's probably specialized knowledge.
I mean, I don't think it's necessary to find the treasure, just like his little nod, tip of the hat towards his worship, his Forrest worship, his Fenn worship, not his Christ worship. Maybe it's just me, but yeah. I mean, like
I think one thing that we all get wrapped up in is that each and every one of us, when we come into this chase and this endeavor together, we all have our own specialized knowledge, what we're trained in, what we specialize in our work, or what our hobbies are, or what our interests are. And when we come into this chase, we somehow feel that specialized knowledge, our previous education or whatever it may be, somehow attunes us perfectly to figuring this thing out. And Mike, I'm sure you can agree with this. I mean, you get in there and you're like, oh man, you know, my hobby and my amateur or being an astronomer or whatever, you know, makes me, you know, attuned to being at this, or being an electrical engineer makes me maybe better at figuring this thing out than somebody else. And we take that, and I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying each and every one of us may do us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's, he said that the average redneck can figure this thing out. And that's one thing that's made me key about poem purity is what is each four of us here have in common. The one thing each and every one of us have in common is we speak the English language. You know, we may think we know it, but we don't know everything about it. But it's the one thing that each and every one of us has in common. Is it specialized knowledge? No, it's just what we grew up with. And as far as poem purity and what the basics, in my opinion, of poem purity is understanding word meaning, grammar that goes into everything else that is associated with. That's the thing that we all have in common, not this specialized knowledge that we bring in from outside knowledge. And sorry, I got off my soapbox now, and I'll. Well, let
me. I don't want to cut you off, Mike, but you're into foundry and casting, okay? My family does quite a bit of similar things with forging, blacksmithing, all that sort of thing. And we know Forrest Fenn does that sort of thing. I mean, I'm kind of interested in Fenn's hobbies because, man, wouldn't that be great if the Firehole River was parallel with the idea of casting bronze? Who knows, you know?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I didn't get into casting to try and walk in Fenn's footsteps. I mean, I think it gives me a little better insight into how he thinks. At least I hope it does. You know, I got into casting so I could make stuff myself that I can't get otherwise. You know, telescope parts, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's possible. And yeah, we were talking about specialized knowledge, and Sean's talking about we all share a common language, and I think we also share maybe with the redneck from Texas is maybe common sense,
culture,
and I think maybe when I read that statement from Fenn, what I see is we should be applying common sense to this. You don't see rednecks don't have a reputation for being, really sophisticated, highly educated, but they get stuff done. Common sense, So
well, I don't know if you agree with me, but some of these guys from like England and Australia trying to find this treasure, I think they're at a huge disadvantage. I mean, they're already 3 steps behind the redneck culture. That's easy for most of us to understand, but pretty difficult. Like, I would never try to go to England and find a treasure based on a poem in England, even though my whole ancestry is from there. I wouldn't ever think that I was going to have enough advantage to find a treasure in England or Australia. It's just
I can tell you there's a gentleman by the name of Paul who watches our channel and does comment a lot. And I've watched some of his videos. He's a pretty sharp guy, and he's got some of this nailed down. I think he's figured some of this stuff out, and it's pretty smart.
I think there's a little
I understand what you're saying. It's a cultural difference. Yeah. I mean, obviously, geography is a huge disadvantage. Yeah. As well as the little girl from India. It's a huge disadvantage for somebody who lives in the East Coast and in the Appalachians and in Florida. I mean, it's a huge geographical disadvantage to those who can't get out and search as often. I mean, but look at IG. I mean, IG, still lives pretty far away and gets out here quite often. I know IG, you're in the room, so
IG is my hero.
Geography to him, he makes it. He's a redneck from Illinois. He makes it happen.
Yeah.
He gets out here.
There's a car salesman out there just waiting for him to go on his next trip. When he gets back on the.
Well, I saw in the room that he said his daughter wrecked his car. I don't think it was him. IG, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I think you said that. I caught it in the room, and I'm not ignoring the room. I see there was a couple of comments and stuff, but they're pretty much talking amongst themselves over there.
Well, the one advantage that I think people from other countries may have on us is that if you're going to spend the money to come here from Australia or Japan or England or wherever, you probably ought to really look at that poem a whole bunch more times than we may, because you damn sure better be damn sure before you spend your money on that airfare and that hotel and that rent-a-car and that food, because you're coming here. Plus, you've probably got to convince your significant other that this is a great idea. Don't worry about paying the rent. Oh, sure.
$10,000 minimum trip or whatever. Geez, I can't imagine their spouses. And there's been several guys doing that. It's crazy.
And that was sort of like I was telling Sean, my 2 trips to Yellowstone. My first trip, I was sure. I went out to Yellowstone, searched all over my spot, and I get home, and as the days passed, I couldn't be sure that my spot was off the table. Mm-hmm. And so that facilitated the next trip. So I made darn sure the next trip that I covered, all of my bases. I looked every place that I thought I needed to look. And by the time I was done, I pretty much knew I wasn't going back to that spot in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we've all had that feeling of we'll go on a search and not find it and be real dejected and think, we've screwed up somewhere. Get home, week or two later, it's like, oh, maybe if I just looked behind that other rock, gone another 20 feet down the trail, something like that.
That's exactly what everybody's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody does that. We on that drive home, that flight home, or whatever, you're either down on yourself or you're just reassessing and adjusting, what you may have missed or did wrong, and you're constantly doing that.
Or both.
Well, David, Mike, one thing I wanted to ask you about is, here a few weeks back, David DeCall and I did a video about the structure of the poem. And a lot of that, went into some of the kind of the tense natures of the poem and when he may have written a poem, like he had said, to answer some questions and save others from being asked. I did follow the clues in the poem when I hid the treasure, but I hid the treasure before the poem was complete. And then in parentheses, he put completed. And that, that really got me thinking about the tense natures of the poem. And one thing that you have brought up, a few years back was how the poem is circular, and it's revolving on itself. And, really, where does the poem start? And you kind of had taken the poem, there you go, exactly like that. And done it like that. And I want to give
for anybody that didn't notice.
First of all, I want to give some props to another searcher out there who is in the search community named Jack, who actually had mentioned some of this stuff along these lines as well. So I don't want to forget that person. But Mike, I just really want to ask you about that and what kind of led you to that circular motion and thinking that the poem could be like that, because I think it's very key. I think it's important to talk about and yeah, go for it.
Well, it's I don't know, the first stanza and the fifth stanza, they really just don't seem to fit. Yeah. They really stick out. They're it's like a completely different voice, and I got to looking at it and I thought, well, okay, begin at where warm waters halt. Maybe that's where we need to begin reading the poem.
Yeah. And you were right.
But in hindsight, apparently Fenn has said, okay, begin at where warm waters halt is the first clue. But I have trouble just ignoring the first stanza. I mean, we've only got 24 lines. There's not that many words here. Fenn says it's dangerous to ignore any of them. So I figured, well, if we can't ignore the first stanza, but the clues start further down, then maybe we need to look at the poem where the first stanza still shows up if you start reading from the second stanza. And I thought, well, let me just wrap it around, and there you go. Is that the right interpretation? I don't know. It's just a thought I had, and a piece of paper and some Scotch tape later, there it is.
So you didn't cut any of the stanzas out, right? You just
no,
yeah, exactly. Because I think there's something beautiful and profound about the first stanza. The second stanza is where we start. So there's it's almost an obvious tease by Fenn. It's some kind of earmark or signal, flashing neon sign saying, look at me in the first stanza. We don't know what that is. I would love to know what it is. It could be as simple as that's where the ninth clue is, and second stanza is first clue, but maybe it's something more. Maybe there is the circular nature of the poem, in my interpretation, could be this circle of life, metamorphosis sort of thing, like the butterflies and the dragonflies, frogs. Even Sean pointed out that a girl, I was always wondering, how does a girl match this bell and jar theme? But there's a little metamorphosis there too. So Why not? Anyway, I don't know if you.
Shelley can do a show on the metamorphosis of women on her softer side. Shelley, if you're watching, you can do a show on that.
Well, we're trying to.
That's a topic for you, Shelley.
We're trying to figure out what Fenn means.
We're men. We don't understand women. I'm nearly 50 years old. I still don't understand you guys. It's a mystery, and I think you guys do it on purpose.
I think probably solving the poem's easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, come on. Listen, I'll tell you how to understand women. I'm the princess, okay, and just do everything I tell you. That's understanding women right there.
Yeah, except my girlfriend's a tomboy, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, not every case. That's
Come on, you wear the pants in the relationship, right, Mike? When you're doing her laundry, is that it?
Sometimes you got to take your lumps, brother.
I was going to say, hell no, if you were talking to me. I don't wear no pants. Hell no.
Stand up. I got to see this.
No. If you
he's wearing boxers. We don't want to see your whitey tighties, man.
Oh,
no,
now you got me
right down there, Nicole. We don't want to know.
Hey, M. Davis or Mike, do you? I mean, we disagreed on the Fenn failure box a long time ago. That was probably one of our biggest disagreements, and of course I'm not stuck on that. You're not stuck on that. But do you think that Fenn, when he brought it up again, no, get back in the box, do you think he was actually referring to that whole debate? I mean,
I don't know. I like to think he had me in mind, but maybe he didn't.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe not. The whole failure box thing was just another way of saying, confirmation bias. Basically, all those things that I had in the box lead to confirmation bias, and confirmation bias is a killer for this. It's going to send you down rabbit holes, going to send you down the wrong path, and it's a killer. So you have to get away from the confirmation bias, and I do that by cutting out as much as possible, except for the poem. And still confirmation bias, even in the poem, is easy enough to find, but I cut out a lot of the extraneous stuff, and that's what I was getting at by getting out of the failure box. The things that cause excessive confirmation bias. Basically.
Yeah, well, we don't need to talk much about it, but I mean, you put brown trout in there, Lewis and Clark, scrapbooks, Omegas, Thrill of the Chase, Hot Springs, brown bears, fishing holes, Yellowstone, that sort of thing. You guys Google the Fenn failure box, you'll find a picture of it pretty easy. It's very interesting.
That's what I'm looking for, and I can't find it right now. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I've got it right here.
I found your circular poem thing, M. Davis, but I can't find the failure box.
Oh, it's there somewhere. It's there somewhere. Yeah. It'll be the thing I'll be known for.
Oh, there it goes.
There we are.
It is. Yep.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
That's because people base their solutions on that stuff. It's like I was saying in the beginning. I saw people basing their solutions off the stories that they read in The Thrill of the Chase instead of on the poem.
Yeah.
If the poem was in there at all, it was as an afterthought, and that's going to lead to failure every time, in my humble opinion. And we got almost 9 years of experience that shows that seems to be the case. So.
Well, a lot of that, it was fun when Dale was here. I mean, there were a lot of things that people took as facts, and a lot of things that Dale and Forrest did just as jokes, or that the entire story wrapped around an image was completely different than most people believed it to be. And it's an amazing thing when you're confronted with the truth about something that you may have put your entire solve around. I mean, that's like a holy shit moment. Who's going back to the drawing board now?
Yeah, it's like, okay, punctuation doesn't matter, right? Or the origin of the cover photo on the second book. Or
the third book, yeah.
Yeah. You could just hear the sacred cows getting gored. Yeah.
So you brought it up, but what is your thought on this whole punctuation doesn't matter thing? This debate that just came out recently. I know David doesn't want to talk about it.
If you see me clutch my chest, 911.
Okay, well,
I'm just completely laughing about it.
Punctuation has never really mattered much in any of my solution ideas, so it really hasn't affected me any. I never was an adherent to the 9 clues, 9 sentences. The semicolon has some sort of special mystical meaning or whatever.
Oh, now you're gonna piss off larcenist.
Oh, I piss off larcenists 3 or 4 times a day anyway, so I'm not worried about that.
That's fun. It's fun to piss off larcenists.
Right.
Sorry, Lars, we're just messing with you, buddy.
I really think though semicolon is a wink though. I really do think it's a wink.
It could be. I mean, that's probably one of the best interpretations of it I've heard, right there.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, it's in the perfect spot. I won't go into why I think it's in the perfect spot, but it's some mischievous moment.
Oh, here we go. We're gonna start talking about sex now. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
Where's Shelly when we need her? We're gonna bring Shelly in here.
Oh no. I think the whole debate about the punctuation rests on the way that the question was asked. The only way that you can answer a question is by answering the way that it's asked. Okay? If you ask a question, if you're a parent and you ask your child a question in a certain way, why'd you call her an old biddy or whatever, I didn't call her an old biddy. I said, you thought she was an old biddy. I actually screwed that up, but anyway, the way the question is it's the way the question is asked. Okay. And so there was only one way for Fenn to really answer that. Is punctuation going to help you find the chest? Punctuation isn't going to help you find the chest. What it's going to help you do is understand a little bit more about the poem. And there's only really one way of looking at the poem that really matters. Okay. So to everybody else that it's interpreting in a completely different way, that's fine. It doesn't matter. And as I also said to Sean, and I don't know if Fenn Treasure Hunter's still in here, and I don't mean to offend anybody else that's prior service. For those of us who signed on that dotted line to defend our country, we also defended your right to have your opinion on these things. We also, signed on that dotted line to defend your right to get stupid about it. If you're going to get stupid about it, all right, So my solution is I turn off the computer, I let you get stupid all day long, and that's that. But I'm not going to get so wrapped up in it. You have that right. I don't have the chest. Nobody here has the chest. You've got the right to go do it your way, but don't step on my way. Don't condemn or criticize me, and you shouldn't expect me to condemn or criticize you. And if we can all be adults about that, then the whole punctuation question doesn't matter. The answer doesn't matter. Let's go find the chest.
Yep. Amen.
I'm done.
Well said.
Amen. Thank you.
I probably have 101 questions for Davis.
You got one more. You're down to one more. That's it.
Mitzi wants to know boxers or briefs. Davis, that's for you.
Wants to know.
Yeah. Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
He's a double layer
Totally
fella.
ambiguous answer. Oh my God.
No.
Underwear doesn't matter, folks.
The hell it doesn't.
My boys need a house.
So one thing that came out this week I wanted to bring up is that we had a featured question that came out Monday over on Jenny's site. I'm going to go ahead and over here and read it really quick if you guys aren't familiar with it, but the featured question came out, again, like I said, Monday. It said, Dear Mr. Fenn, once you hid the treasure, did you take the exact same route in reverse to return to your car? Thank you, Tyler. Why? And Forrest responded, yes, I did, Tyler. It was the most direct route. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I posted a response to that on Harry's. I think, that, he was doing something furtive. He didn't want to be seen. He had to make 2 trips. He wouldn't want to be interrupted doing this. That would be awkward, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he probably didn't hang around. He didn't tarry. He didn't sniff the sunshine. He got down to business. He took the most direct route to the hiding place twice and back and got the heck out of there before anybody noticed. That's my theory.
Yep. DeCall, what do you think of that?
I think I generally try and think of what is the most obvious answer to the question, or what's the most obvious question that he's answering, the most obvious question. and it seems like, okay, from the car to the chest, is there multiple ways to get there? That's probably what he's alluding to. Is there one more to, should we come in from the back way? Is it much easier than crossing a river here? Or I think he's just saying, no, it's pretty simple. You just get out of your car and you go directly to the, like in most solves, you going to the chest, you could go as the crow flies in a straight line, but that wouldn't be the most direct route at all. It'd probably take you an extra hour or two, you know? But you know, if you stay on trail and just stick with the basic route or the simplest direct route, that's probably all he's getting at. He's just saying, let's don't complicate this. Let's just go directly to the treasure. That's what everybody really wants to know.
That's a good possibility, yeah.
But what if that most direct route is going up a steep hill or something? We've talked about this to call, whereas, you know, from where you parked your car to where your spot in your solve is what you said, like 2.9 miles, right? Which fits into that less than a few miles, and we can argue about that, but you know, that does fit within yours. But is the most direct route from where you park your car to where, you know, you believe it is? Could it be, you know, up a steep hill or something, you know, or could there be some other geological feature that blocks your way?
Well, in my solve, very simply, after like 1 mile, I switched to like animal trails, but they're very convenient. They're real elk trails, and they're well worn, and I'm really and that's following the Fenn statements, you know, not near human trail or whatever, and it's still within the under 2.9 miles. I'm at 2.1 miles to what I consider the blaze. So, but I'm flexible. There's multiple targets in my area still to be searched. So thoroughly.
Yeah. David, you got anything to add to that?
Well, as every week, I was busy asking Missy if she was wearing boxers or briefs, so I have no idea what the question was.
We need to put you and Mitzi in a room together, apparently. That's
no, we are in a room together, trust me. Somewhere in her mind, we're in a room together.
No, answer that one, right?
Hey, Mike, have you said what state you're searching in, or do you have a half solve, complete solve? Where are you at right now?
Most of my searching's been done in Colorado.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I started out in northern New Mexico, but it kind of drifted northward over time. So,
yeah, and I mean, you probably love most people that are in Colorado love the idea that Colorado is not talked about by Fenn much. I mean, that's a leading reason for going to Colorado is Fenn hasn't talked about it, and even though Fenn is not doing subterfuge or deliberately trying to mislead us, a lot of people find value or would think that this low-hanging fruit is not acceptable, and we have to think outside the box, sure, and get to those places that where Fenn would actually hide this thing. He would never speak of the place that he would hide it in, which is contrary to what I believe. I think just the opposite, that he would hide it near one of his mentioned places, but that's my style. But
I've never thought it made any sense for him to have a hide a treasure and then write a book where he talks about the area where he hid it. I think probably it's hidden somewhere that he's never mentioned. So not necessarily Colorado. There's lots of places in New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana that he hasn't mentioned either. So, you know, that it could be anywhere, but I think it's going to be somewhere he's never talked about.
What do you think, Mike? What do you think is like an example of a special place?
But that could still be just a region within a state. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a whole entire state, right?
Right.
I mean, it could still do.
No.
I mean, he talks everywhere in Wyoming about Meeteetse and Lander and you know, obviously Yellowstone. But there's obviously, you know, a lot of people like the Wind River, you know, area. I mean, Bighorn area. I mean, there, you know, and there's a lot of areas in there that they like that are not talked about in the Thrill of the Chase book in Wyoming.
Right, exactly. And I've been spending a lot of time in Wyoming because my girlfriend owns properties out there. So so far I haven't
Hey,
figured out.
You've done some fossil digging and stuff up there
Yeah,
too, right?
fossil digging out there. Yeah, paleontology,
That's very
another
cool.
one of my many hobbies. So yeah, but yeah, so I haven't figured out a solution for what in Wyoming yet, but I'm getting into that area a lot. So
Oh, nice.
yeah,
Hallelujah.
yeah.
I mean, Mike, what I was asking you before was, what do you think qualifies as a special place to Fenn? I mean, what does it look like to you?
That's a really good question, and I wish I knew the answer to that. I mean, it could be anything. It could be anything at all. It could be special because
unicorns and kittens along a waterfall.
Yes.
Maybe,
Yes.
yeah.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
last week, if you're watching AGK and they asked them, what it looked like, it was amazing. The beautiful pictures that people were painting, waterfalls and flowing water and green grass. And it was like, wow, this is like a scene. I said it was like a scene out of Blue Lagoon for all you old people.
Yeah. And the problem with those fantastical notions of how beautiful and gorgeous the place is there's not a place in the Rockies that wouldn't have been discovered and turned into a national park or some sort of protected area. And it would be full of tourists all summer long. So I don't think that's Fenn's idea of a special place.
But what's really neat, though, is all those things they were describing. And Fenn says you people are all hung up on waterfalls. But as beautiful as they were making that place in a picture to put in your mind, I don't care if that place is nothing but flat ass sand and scorpions. To Fenn, it's as beautiful as the picture as those people were painting it.
Exactly. There's something about the place that's important to Fenn. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be important to anybody else.
No.
And I think that's why it's such a good hiding place.
Yeah, but I personally, I've made a list. I've made a list of things. Okay, his first kiss. Okay, maybe some childhood fishing spot. Maybe some teenage memory with just any pal, innocent. Maybe some other outdoor experience or whatever. And then I started. What I have in my solve is even a little more high priority for somebody like Fenn. It's a grave site. Okay, it's an actual mound that looks like his final resting place. Now, the reason I think that takes a higher priority than all those other things like first kiss or whatever is because, okay, now you're tapping into a deeper need to be important for eternity, which is the same kind of talk that Fenn has. He has this discussion all the time that he wants to be kind of understood and remembered for eternity. What else is going to do that? His own grave fits the other theme of death and graves in his books. I mean, that's a perfect example to me of why the book might be important. This several instances of graves and going there to think. Why not? I know Christy doesn't like the idea of a mound of dirt, but
let's take something out of the book that relates to what we're talking about now, and that's out of the chapter Flywater. And he talks about, those special places, and we know that he's referring to the Firehole River because we can go back to his previous story that he published in the West Yellowstone paper about that, where he actually removed the Firehole River out, were special places to him when he held, but they're now filled with, people that are making special memories for themselves. How dare they, intrude in those places that were special to him? So that place, kind of like Mike is saying, is that, it's not going to be some mystical place where, in a waterfall, or in my opinion, where kittens and unicorns romp, because that would become a special place to all of America, and they would cordon it off and charge us to get in there. I mean, again, like, what did he say? What did you expect for free admission? Or at least Skippy said.
Skippy, yeah.
So, I look at that and go, and I lost my train of thought here really quick.
I think you are getting at the idea of what's a higher priority for a special place. And maybe it isn't kittens and unicorns, but maybe it is some monumental remembrance of Fenn, this eternal perspective of Fenn's life. We
keep as searchers. It's just like our specialized knowledge that we have to this thing. We have our own picture in our mind of what that special place is. It's like David will tell you that special place to him is where, him and his wife got married. That's a very special place to him. But if I was to walk there in that place, I'd look around and I'd go, this is fucking ugly. Not that I would say that, David. I'm just saying Tracy's going to be pissed off at me, but I would be like, why is this place special? And if a place is special to me, DeCall or Mike might go up there and go, this place is freaking ugly. It's only special to me. This place is only special to Forrest for reasons that we do not know. If we keep trying to force fit our opinion what that special place may be, like Yellowstone or something, because he talks about it so fondly, and there it's like Mike's, failure box. These are things that people have continued to do. I'm not saying that the treasure is not associated with Yellowstone or the trail doesn't begin in Yellowstone. I'm just saying if we continue to look outside the box, and in my opinion, that box is the poem, and then more so maybe even the book itself, that's the box, in my opinion. If we start looking outside that for the answers, like Forrest Fenn has said, some people are looking, out there as if the solution lies out there somewhere. The solution doesn't lie out there on Mr. Google looking up historical references and going down countless rabbit holes. Again, I'm not saying the rabbit hole is grammar. I'm not saying that's what it is. That's what it is to me, and that's a rabbit hole I'm going down as a poem purist. But I don't know. I'm sorry I rambled on about that, but Mike, I think you wanted to interject something there.
I've given up trying to figure out what Fenn thinks is so special about his place, because it does lead to rabbit holes. It leads to confirmation bias. We're not going to know whether we're right in the ballpark or completely off in left field. You never know. So I've given up doing that. I just figure that the place is special because it's a really good hiding place. So
it's fair enough.
It's a really good hiding place, and Fenn knew it was going to be a really good hiding place, so that's where he hid the thing. Yeah.
And it can last 1,000 years. It's got to be something that, like he said, it's not that. And Toby, I don't know if you completely blatantly misquoted him or if it was on purpose or accident or don't. He didn't make it to where the treasure would last for 1,000 years. He had to structure it in the way that it could last 1,000 years, if possible. Somebody could find it next weekend. That's not 1,000 years. That's only 8 years. But he had to construct it and put it in a place that could last 1,000 years. And then, it just so happens that place is special. We don't know. But he also had to figure out a place that could, theoretically, that treasure could rest for 1,000 years undisturbed, and Mother Nature could not detrimentally affect it, other than wind, possibly blowing some weeds in there and whatever, there is that. So sorry, Mike, I know I cut you off there. I just want to get that point out.
Yeah. And to what DeCall was saying, about the place where he was going to go hide his treasure and die. And it was going to be, I think it was going to be his legacy. I think the treasure is his legacy, really. It's not the place. It's the treasure. I mean, he didn't want to wind up, forgotten like his father, if you believe what's written in The Thrill of the Chase, right? So the way he's not getting forgotten, I mean, he's going to die and become dust like everybody who came before him. The way he's not being forgotten is he's hidden his treasure out there. His original plan was to, throw his bones on it, so to speak. But that didn't work out. But the treasure's still out there, and it's going to be his legacy. He's going to be remembered for that, at least as long as the treasure remains hidden.
Well, he talks so much about, in the epilogue, about how many people were at his funeral, that there was, the funeral area, the home, the church or whatever, was completely full of friends and family. And there was still people, hundreds of people outside. There was all these people that loved Marvin and were affected by his life. And, those people that he'd walk down the street with, and the guy would, grin and smile at him and go, "Oh, you're Mr. Fenn, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, well, you gave me a spanking, when I was a kid." And he's like, "Well, it seemed like you turned out to be a fine young man. It looks like the spanking worked." And the guy would just say, "Oh, I just wanted to shake your hand." So he did affect so many people. But then when you look up on Google, he's like, well, all that's known about him is he's, buried in row 4, block 23, and he's like, that, I think that affected Fenn, and in a sense, it's like, oh my God, my father was this great man. And he taught not only me so much, but all these other people and the people that are at his funeral. And he's like, I imagine there'll be plenty of people at my funeral, but, in 10 years after I die, is all that's going to be on the internet is block 4 of 23. No, it's going to be the 800-foot salamander in a floating hat. That's all it's going to be about.
That's
Fenn.
right. That's right.
Wait, my turn.
Sorry, Nicole, I had to throw one at you. Go ahead, David.
I like that. Well, no, I look at it as, he's limited this thing to 4 states, the Rocky Mountains, okay? And with the exception of Vietnam and some other places, Korea and so forth, his life took place between Temple, Texas, and we'll say Yellowstone. That's where his life took place. Is within that picture frame, okay? And so that somewhere within those boundaries is obviously going to be the place where something, important or something special to him, and that's the big thing when he says special to me. That's your excluder. That's the one that lets you know that you're never going to know, you're never going to figure it out. Took it out of the autobiography, and so that's it.
Yep.
It's a very special place.
Even if we find the treasure, we may not know why that place was special to him.
Yeah, and that's what he just said in that recent Q&A with Jenny, where she asked him, when someone finds a treasure, understand why this place was special to you. And that's a really quick synopsis, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. But, he turned around and said, well, Jenny, maybe, but probably not. Their mind might be on other things. And Dale was quick to say, oh, they're going to be, worried about getting out of there with a treasure and how to spend it. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. They again, it's like if it was found in Montana or Yellowstone or anywhere else, they'd be like, oh, well, no brainer. It's special because he talks so fondly of this.
Yeah.
And we'd all probably agree with that. But if it's found somewhere like Mike Davis is saying, found somewhere that he's never really talked about, whether that be a region in Wyoming or New Mexico or Colorado that he's never ever talked about, then we'd all be wondering, why the fuck is this special, Forrest? And Forrest is going, well, that's none of your damn business. I'm not telling you. It's too damn personal to me. Even if you're the one that finds it and you're sitting there sitting with him, why is it special? He's going to be like, well, Mike, that's none of your damn business. What I mean?
It's like
special to me.
It's not enough. I'm giving you a box full of gold. I got to explain, why this is
really, there you go.
To me, like,
amen, brother, amen.
Yeah. Take the gold and shut up and go away, okay?
Go in peace, damn it. Leave me the fuck alone.
Mike, what do you think when Fenn says to get back in the box? Then what do you think? What does that mean to you, or what do you think is some good examples of getting back in the box? Then,
well, I'm trying to remember what all was going on back when that came out, because, I had my failure box out probably I don't know if it was a couple years, but it was quite a while.
It was 7 months before.
7 months? Was it that long?
Yeah, okay. I was paying attention before he said, okay, get back in the box. But I'm just saying in general, I mean, Fenn, because Fenn has reiterated, get back in the box, and there's still something major that's key that most people are not understanding. He didn't say all are not understanding. He made that very clear to K-Pro when he said that. So there's something that's key that most people aren't getting, and get back in the box. He restated recently. So I'm curious your feelings on that.
Well, I took it to mean simplify. I think people are just getting too complicated. Too many different levels, too many different inferences pulled from too many different places, and, simplify. It's not that hard. And he keeps telling us how it's straightforward.
But it's still kind of crazy, because I'm like thinking simplify means West Yellowstone, and you're thinking simplify means maybe Colorado. Yeah, poem. Well, sure. I mean, but I know it's easy to make that blanket statement, but of course I argue with Sean and other people all the time, constantly, about the poem. That's all I really care about for purity and truth. But I'm asking myself, what the hell did he print this book for? Or what is his legacy? If it's found 8 feet deep or 3 feet deep or 12 inches deep in Colorado, I just don't understand how that ties it all into this one Fenn legacy package. I don't understand that package at all.
But again, that's our subjective belief that it has to be in some special place. And like Mike is saying, the legacy or whatever is just the story and the feeling and the mood and everything else that he has provided to us, and not necessarily the exact location, and it's just our subjective opinion and bringing our outside influences. And I'm not saying you're wrong to call. I mean, by all means, it could be right where you're looking, and you just were, 12 feet away from it and couldn't find it. I mean, I can't say that with any level of certainty that you're wrong or anybody else is wrong. But I think if we keep trying to bring in our outside personal biases and opinions into this, it's just going to lead us down so many rabbit holes, and it's very hard. It's absolutely very difficult to do what I believe M. Davis and I are doing. And by no means can we say that we are absolutely right. It's very difficult to just stick with the poem. Yeah.
The hardest thing in this is to exclude stuff. You're always wanting to pull stuff in. You're always seeing something that gives you some kind of confirmation bias. It's really hard to exclude stuff and just stick to the poem. I find myself.
And people say we're hamstringing ourselves. People are always like, oh, well, you're just hamstringing yourself by not including the hints in the book. And I'm like, maybe so. Maybe that person's absolutely right. I am hamstringing myself, but that's my decision. This is my thrill of the chase. And I'm trying to mitigate as much confirmation bias and subjectivity as I can. Now, I cannot, people are like, well, they're saying, well, the poem is not objective. And you're right. It is me, the reader and the searcher and the thinker that is trying to remain objective, not the poem. The poem is supposed to be straightforward, but apparently after 8 years, that's not we still haven't figured that out.
This is Fenn's idea of straightforward as everybody else's.
He's like, it's right there, guys. We're like, where? We can't see it.
Fenn, I said years ago that I think Fenn is just too close to the problem. To him, it's simple, but then he's the only one who knows where it is.
My damn point.
Yeah.
I think that's the best part about meeting Forrest Fenn is that you're actually meeting the person, the only person in the entire world that knows where that chest is.
Yep.
Isn't that pretty cool?
And he's not going to tell you a damn thing that's going to help you.
That's all right. Shit, I don't care. It's all right. I'm putting a pair of moccasins in my pocket and getting the hell out of the house.
I want to go there, and I'm just going to sit and talk to Peggy. I'm going to totally ignore Forrest if I ever
meet him. That would be an interesting interview.
I'm going to talk to Peggy. He'd be like, why aren't you talking to me? I'm like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to sit over here and I'm going to drink some Worcestershire sauce with Peggy. Take out the trash.
Take out the trash. What the hell?
She's got to know.
Sit down, Forrest.
She's got to know some
bell is for me tonight. You sit down and you sit there with Willie. I'll take the trash out tonight.
Hell yeah.
Hey, Mike, you function well with little sleep? You do good with that?
I actually noticed the time it's after 11. I'm going to have to cut this off and go to bed because if I get less than 6 hours of sleep, I'm pretty useless. And we're already into that territory now. But I do function on very little sleep. I work long hours and I try to
Mike, you got a phone?
Put the rest of life into that.
You got a phone? You got a phone?
Yeah.
Call in sick, damn it.
The hardest thing in the world to do to call in sick is when you're the boss.
Yep, because then everybody else is going to take it easy that day. But yeah, I'm sure you're like me. When you get rocking and rolling at work, you're committed, you're fired up, you're working on your projects, you're in the zone. And I see you as that kind of person. I'm fascinated by the idea of electronics. I love what you're doing, man. And I like your blog. I like all your subjects. It's not easy casting and grinding and polishing glass and astronomy, making your own projects is pretty impressive. I like it all. I'm a hands-on guy myself.
Thanks. Cool. Yeah, I love getting my hands dirty and building stuff. It helps me de-stress after long days at work. Nice. I got to create stuff. I just got to get out in my workshop and make something. I was out in the workshop, making up molds for lost foam casting before we came in here and started this, just, de-stressing after work. So,
yeah, beautiful.
Hope you got a big Faraday cage.
Well, I'll just I'll put out a quick few PSAs, Mike, and if you need to go, brother, by all means, that you're not going to hurt our feelings. I'm just going to.
I think I'm going to say my goodbyes and I think I'm going to say my goodbyes and cut out of here because I really need to get to bed. So I'm somewhat awake tomorrow. Yep. So sure. Maybe.
Michael, we definitely appreciate you coming out and hanging out with us. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you for taking some time.
It's great fun.
Meeting you, Mike.
Yeah, good meeting you guys too. You two to call. We've had our battles, but
yeah, just for fun. It's all fun. Yeah, it's not real.
All fun and games.
Definitely not real.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for having me on, Sean. This has been great. And I hope it doesn't do too much to your ratings. You know, maybe you'll invite me back someday.
We might get a couple more dislikes from a couple of people, but that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
It's about the people that are here and the people that do like the show. So that's
we know what their opinions are like.
Yeah.
Assholes. We all got them.
Oh, yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. Do with yours what you want.
Mike, have a good night, brother.
All right. You too. Good night, guys.
We'll catch you over at Harry's.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I do want to put out a couple of quick PSAs. I did talk to K-Pro, Christy, this evening, and she did want to tell us that we are nearly $13,000 worth of raise for Jay Diggins. And she also got a couple more items. She's going to be putting out an update over on Thor on her thread over there as far as the fundraising
there she
goes.
Is. She
but
just
also
popped up.
Is she in? Hey, K-Pro, how are you? But she also did mention that, this is turning into a wonderful event. Did Call lock up on us? I think he might have. But this is turning into a pretty great event that's going to happen here next week, starting probably Wednesday of next week. You know, we plan on having K-Pro back over here if she can make it and she's not too wrapped up. There he is, sort of back.
There you are, brother.
But there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen that week of the fundraising. Starting Wednesday, but also going into Thursday. But she did mention there will be an after party, I think at the Blue Corn, and you can correct me, K-Pro, if I'm wrong on this. That will be happening immediately after the event at the Collected Works. And then there will also be a Friday morning event where I think there will be a get-together going on as well. So I don't want to take too much of K-Pro's thunder away. We'll possibly have her on next week. Or maybe the upcoming weekend update if she's up to it. And we'll have her on there to give us an update. And I think Mike Cowlings will be putting updates as well that are coming out and what he's doing. I think Mike is actually still trying to get out there. DeCall, are you still trying to make it out there or what's going on with you?
I haven't even had the conversation with the wife. I'm certainly afraid, very afraid. Yeah.
Leave a note.
Yeah, brave and don't be. It's no place for the meek, buddy. Come on.
Hey, there you go. Good.
Don't you got some welding work to do out here? I might be able to find you some work out here.
Yeah. Now we're talking. Now we're creative.
Now you make some money while you're out here, and then she won't be so bad. Then she might start liking me a little bit more, not giving.
Got a job. Yes,
that ain't happening. That is not happening.
Right. It'll be under full disclosure, no question about that. But
yeah, look at K-Pro's. K-Pro's on there like, come on, DeCall, you got to get out there. So yeah, my wife is kind of giving me permission to go, but we're gonna see how that flies. We're gonna see. I might be able to work it out with some work stuff that's going out in Las Vegas, New Mexico as well. So if I can time that right, we might be able to make it happen. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a live show out there at the after party at the Blue Corn or something. We might work something out. But really, that's all we got for tonight, guys. It was great. I'm glad we were able to get Mike Davis in here and, be able to share some with us. And again, some of you guys out there on the forums and here in the chat room, if you're interested in, coming on the show and spending a few minutes with us and sharing your search story, your, fresh off boots on the ground story or coming back, we'd love to have you on here. You can reach out to us. You can reach me at my forum name, which is Sean, NM, abbreviation for New Mexico, at hotmail.com. Send me an email or something. Tell me, hey, you'd like to be on here, and I can try and vet you, so to speak, and see if you can get all your video and everything to work, and we'll try and get you on the show, whether that be the weekend update or here on the on the after party show. We'd love to. Again, it's about bringing not just Fenn tubers, but bringing people that are part of this community come in here and get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, if you're interested in doing something like that, sure, hit me up with an email. We'd love to have you on. We probably got all kinds of
totally not. Mitzi wants you to know that the Blue Corn is a gay bar, so enter at your own risk.
Hey, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's right.
Is it really? Maybe I got this wrong.
I don't know.
K-Pro, please tell us we're not having the after party.
No, wait a minute. What was it? It was the Blue Oyster Bar or something crap like that on Police Academy.
Blue Oyster, yeah. Was the Blue Court? I don't know. K-Pro, come on, hook us up here. Tell us what's going on. Anyway, guys, we just want to say we thank you all for coming and joining us tonight. And spending an hour and a half of your Wednesday evening with David DeCall and Mike and I, and having a drink and your beverage of choice and hanging out with us. And I just want to, remind everybody, if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, there's another button for you too, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, look,
share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel.
Already gave you a thumbs down. Hey, I got.
That's okay. That's okay. They're not assholes. They just don't like what we're talking about. That doesn't make them an asshole.
That's true. That's true.
That's okay.
That's all right. Yeah.
We can't please everybody, folks.
MDavis came on, and we got less thumbs down. Wow.
Hey,
right.
And next
That's amazing
with MDavis.
Yep. Anyway, guys, again, it's been great hanging out with you guys and spending our Wednesday night. And we wish you a great rest of your week. And we will catch you, this Saturday on the weekend update. And to call David, you got any last words before we close this thing out?
Nah, I'm good. Give us a thumbs up for crying out loud. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, and thank you. Good job. And don't forget to check out my YouTube channel, Decall Thomas, Decall space Thomas. Check out my keto diet videos. It's really changed my life for the better. And I also got several Fenn treasure videos and lots of welding videos. Call me sometime, email me sometime. You want to talk about welding or whatever, Wait,
I got one more. You said it's Decall space Thomas.
Yeah, with the word space. No,
it should be Decall Space Force Thomas.
Yeah, I'm into that. I'm totally into that.
I am too. I'm all good. Yeah, it's going to be great.
I want to ask Trump about the Space Force. It's real.
You can weld together the first ship out of a Volkswagen microbus.
They're out there. There's hundreds of them.
Amen.
Guys, we appreciate once again you guys coming out to hang out with us. Again, if you like the show, give it a like. If you don't, there's another one for you too. That's perfectly fine. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we will catch you all on the flip side. Hang around, guys.